Hello, this is Sandra and my opinion. Well, today's my opinion is about peace, war, and military alliances. That's kind of a hot topic around the world for the moment, so I'm just gonna get into it. And of course, I do have an opinion about that too. Well, first of all, I want to say that speaking of this, I do have military experience. I have done two tours, one to Bosnia and one to Kosovo. To Bosnia when was unrest there and some shooting was going on, and I was sort of in the danger zone there, so I do know a little bit about what I'm talking about. Well, first of all, peace. Well, world peace is a great concept, I think. The thing is that around the world at the moment there are so many different life views and religions and what to accept and what not to accept, and some cultures and belief systems does not accept other belief systems or cultures or religions, and they are very aggressive, so to speak, about it. And in those situations around the world where we do have very differences of opinions, it is kind of hard to have world peace. And I don't think that there is has been in history peace at all the places at the same time ever. There have always been some place around the world that has been into conflict with a neighbor country or a different country anyways, so it's pretty hard. But when we when we do have conflicts or threat of conflict, it is good to have a defense in your own country. And I do remember back in the 80s when I was on a train in Stockholm in Sweden, there was this big poster for the Women's Auxiliary Air Force, Army and Navy Corps. And it said in Swedish something like this: every country has an army, either their own or somebody else's. And that is true, and that stuck with me like forever. I mean, it's 2022 now, and this was back in like 83, 84, 85 or something like that. So it really stuck with me because it's so true. I don't know who originally said it or wrote it, but it is very, very true. So that brings us to this point in time with war going on or armed conflict or whatever you want to call it. But people are getting hurt, they're hurting people, and people are getting hurt, and people are getting killed, and there are a lot of weapons going on, and diplomacy seems to have failed, and everything. So it is an armed conflict, at least you could call it that, even if I will describe this as war. What's going on right now. Anywho, this can't stop until both sides agree to disagree, so to speak. They must agree that they do have differences, that they do have different life views, and even if their cultures are much the same or even exactly the same, they might have some differences of opinion when it comes to politics or to what is acceptable to say or not to say, or to do or not to do. And that's where people need to learn to accept that they do have differences of opinion, and they do have difference of views how to do things. And every country should be allowed to have their own way of doing things, and they should not go into another country, to a neighboring country, just because they don't like what the neighbors are doing. That would be like me breaking into my neighbor's house because I don't like what she's doing, that would be crazy. I mean, I would have the police come and arrest me at a minute's time, or maybe 5 minutes, depending on what they're doing. But I mean, you have to agree to disagree, and you have to be able to respect your neighbor. You don't have to like it, you don't have to agree with it, but you have to learn how to respect your neighbor and to leave them alone, leave them to it, so to speak. If I don't like what's going on in my country, I'm always free to leave and go to a different country where there are different life views, or morals, or politics, or religions, or whatever it is. And it is much the same for politicians, I think. Maybe they can't leave, but they need to agree to disagree and to respect their neighbors. That is my opinion about peace, war, and military alliances. I think, well, military alliances, I haven't spoken about that much. I want to take an example from my tour in Bosnia. Well, I was living in Sweden at the time. I am a Swedish and Finnish citizen, but I was there as a Swede with the Swedish military service, foreign service, and at the Swedish military base camp in Bosnia. And everything was good. We had this little group of NATO personnel on our camp, but that was all good. We were under NATO command at the time. Sweden weren't a NATO country, but it was the NATO that led the operation at the time. So we did have some NATO personnel at the camp. Anywho, everything went well for a very long time, and all of a sudden there had been a threat to the camp, to our camp. Not to the Swedish camp per se, but to all camps who had NATO personnel. So if we wouldn't have had NATO personnel, we wouldn't have been threatened. It was very clear. They said as much. So what we had to do, that everybody who had some sort of military training, and I did, because I was a sergeant, military Air Force sergeant at the time, and I still am. So I had to, grab my gear, and I had to do my service outside the camp in a guard tower to protect the camp, one of many. And our orders were to fire if fired upon, with real real bullets. And that was very, very scary, because me and all the others, we knew that this would not happen if we didn't have NATO personnel on our camp. So it felt kind of strange, Sweden not being a NATO member, but we were targeted because we had NATO personnel on our camp. And it wasn't very many either. I think it was like, 5-10 people or something like that from a couple of countries. And when people today, now in this NATO debate thingy, say that, oh, it's better to, stronger by numbers, and yeah, fine, that's true. However, neither Sweden or Finland would have a target on their back if we wouldn't be in this NATO negotiating situation where we are right now at this on this day, 29th of April, I think it is, yeah. So if we do join NATO, we will of course have more soldiers to our disposal, but we will also have a increased target on our backs because of other countries. So I'm not really too happy about this. I mean, I'm very much for America and for NATO and everything. I like it, but I don't necessarily like the idea of neutral states getting into military alliances. It's not just a safe thing to do. It brings in complications and a larger threat. So I know that people might think I'm crazy and that I might be wrong, but this is my opinion regarding that particular topic of military alliances. So this was what I was going to say in this episode of peace, war, and military alliances. Stay safe, and I hope you listen in the next episode of my opinion. Thank you. Bye-bye.